How y'all doing today, boys and girls? This is Two Brothers Podcast coming at you live on Friday morning. This is me, Big Dog, Vincent in the house. I'm here brought to you by the co-host, the genius behind it all, Malik Patterson. How y'all doing, brother man?
I'm good. This is episode 1. Doing pretty good.
Hell yeah.
Got one episode under our belt. We into another one. You want to give us a little background history about you, where you play ball at, something?
Oh yeah. So as you know, I'm repping the greater Gunnison area. You know, throw up the dub in the area. Western Colorado, DN number 92, senior year. Damn. And like this whole COVID shit really fucking with my head now. You would think that like all this would have blown by now. That's what I thought at the beginning of the semester, but I just finished up my finals, and the fact that we are still talking about how dangerous COVID is. This is not no more crisis. It's pandemic. It's an issue. It's like anything transferring over to like spring ball got canceled. Is summer ball gonna get canceled? It's constant effect. I want this shit to blow by already.
I completely agree. The only thing that's positive, for me, I'm not playing ball no more, but I'm in my journalism. Gonna get my degree next spring from Northridge, Cal State Northridge, for people that don't know. But it's kind of taking a toll and an effect, because like it kind of affects me in the whole aspect of I gotta do all my classes online, and then also it kind of affects like me going out there and physically trying to get internships. Like, yeah, you can get an internship still, which I'm still actively looking, but it's like online internships. So it's kind of different because they can't really see me, get my personality, all of that good stuff. But I mean, hey, what can you do? But I guess we can get right into the business, right into it. So I want to start off today's topic with a topic that we tried to touch on last week, but we didn't really get fully into it because I just didn't like how we introduced it, and I got more information this time. So today's topic is the NBA, the G League, and what they have going on with the new high school prospects coming out. So they started off with Jalen Green. So Jalen Green, about 3 weeks ago, had 3 decisions he was deciding on. He's the number 1 prospect of this draft, of this high school class. He's a two-way guard out of Fresno, California, and the 3 decisions he was deciding on was Memphis, Auburn, and the G League. I didn't know the G League was a thing up until he put his whole announcement out there, but he decided to go with the G League. And then followed him were 2 other prospects. The 2 other prospects is Isaiah Todd. He was a verbal commit to Michigan and Coach Juwan Howard, who was a member of the Fab Five. Isaiah Todd's forward. I don't know if he's going to play small or power forward because he's 6'10", but he's got some size. He's got some length to him, but he doesn't really have a whole lot of weight to him. And when you're 6'10" in the NBA now, you can play pretty much 3 through 5 if you want, sometimes 2 through 5. It's real interesting depending on just his play style. But from his play style that I've seen, he can play any type of wing. He can play the 3 or the 4. And we have another one. If I butcher his name, my bad. I'm sorry, but I think it's Deshaun Nix. I think that's how you say it, Deshaun. Mm-hmm. Deshaun Nix. He's another 2-way player, 2-way guard to be specific. He's about 6'5". Same thing with Jalen Green. He's about 6'4", 6'5". But Deshaun Nix was actually signed his letter of intent to go to UCLA, and he backed out of his letter of intent to go to UCLA, and he now joined the G League. Now, what the NBA and the G League, because Adam Silver and the G League president, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, they both decided they were going to do this G League pathway. So what that entails is these 3 high school prospects who, because in 2024, you'll be able to come from high school straight to the pros again. There won't be no more one and done. You can come straight out of high school if you're a top prospect straight into the NBA draft. So what they did was they decided they're going to create this pathway for the top high school prospects instead of not going to college and instead of going overseas, because they didn't like the fact that LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton had to go all the way to Australia, which is some of their top NBA prospects, and they've been scouting these kids since 8th grade. they didn't like the fact that, especially Adam Silver, he didn't like the fact that his top 2 NBA prospects who were supposed to be coming out of high school and doing a one-and-done deal had to go across the country and play ball for around the same amount of money that they're going to be offering these 3 kids and for the same amount of exposure. So with the amount of money that these 3 are going to get, they're going to get $500,000 for a whole year. So for this entire upcoming year, they're going to get $500,000, and they're not going to play on a specific G League team. That's the kicker. They're not going to play on a specific G League team. What they're going to do is they're going to be paired up with some veterans. They're going to play in like some circuits. They're going to play against a few G League teams in the circuits, but they're mainly going to play against other national teams. So they're going to play against, they're going to do like a Europe tour and play against like the Spain team, the Croatian team, the Serbian team. They're going to pair and go against overseas, play against the national China team, the Brazilian team, the Australian team. They're just going to play and go across the country and across the globe and play these different teams, and then they'll be ready and they'll be draft ready. They hope that they'll be draft ready by 2021 draft. So when the 2021 draft comes around, they'll be $500,000 richer. They'll be able to get their shoe deals early. So they'll be roughly in the million range, roughly around $1 million if they do their money situation properly. And they'll be probably the first 3 picks off the board, depending on how college goes next season. What are your takes on this?
That can go in multiple ways. You think of the first thing I thought of when you was bringing up the type of players that had to go overseas to Australia and stuff like that. Besides, it was LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton. RJ Hampton's, I wouldn't say he lost more from this. He just didn't gain as much as LaMelo Ball did. LaMelo Ball put on shows every other game that he was there, and that's what made his draft stock rise to potentially be the number 1 pick if he actually ends up becoming that pick. And it's also thinking about how players can actually receive money and stuff like that. I assume 500,000, $500,000. That's something a college player would never even thought of receiving. This was back in, say, LeBron James when he got out of high school and stuff, when he came out of high school and stuff like that. So, it's going to be like a lot of avenues that they're going to have to work around just to make sure that everything runs as smoothly and as properly as this entails, because these players not going to the college scene like how, how the traditional route entails. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for the college players who want the NCAA, since they're missing out on like having the potential best player in the college not be showing or not displaying their talent on March Madness.
Yeah, it kind of, I don't want to say it undercuts the NCAA, but at the same time, the NCAA has been kept the same traditional rules, and the game has changed. The game has changed across all sports, no matter what sport you're talking about. Game has changed. The high school players are getting better, and specifically for basketball, some of your best players, you have NBA, then high school, and then you have college. And then some of these high school players, whether they come from the US, Canada, wherever, have to now play somewhere else because college may not be for them, and they may be getting more opportunity, more money playing somewhere else, playing overseas. Not necessarily in LaMelo's case, because he came from a good family and he came from a middle-class background. But for some, these kids are coming out of poverty-stricken areas. They're coming out of low-income areas, and they are the golden ticket for not just themselves, but for their family, for a lot of people. And staying in these areas aren't positive for them. So they rather either go to college and do that one-and-done rule. But now that they realize that other avenues are opening up for them to get more money and get more money fast and still be able to play ball, it's like it's a win-win situation. Why should I go to college, play, and not receive no money, not receive anything that's going to help me beneficially? I'm just going to class, checking off the boxes, barely getting C's passing, when I can just go and play ball somewhere else. I can go overseas. I can do this G League thing now. If I am a top 5 prospect, I can do this G League thing now. And another thing with this G League pathway that they're calling it, they can still go back to college, or they can still go to college and attend college online, or however they want to attend college, and still get the degree that their parents and that everybody was pushing them to do since birth anyway. And the only thing that the NCAA has did in return, and the only thing that they have announced in their whole return for this whole pathway thing, is the NCAA is going to now allow athletes to take endorsement money. So what the NCAA is, they haven't put a specific date on it, but what the article read was they're going to allow players to use their own likeness and use their own exposure and be able to hire themselves an agent and be able to get endorsements, be able to get commercials, gaming, all of that. They can use their own likeness, but the NCAA has a rule and a restriction around it. They can get somewhere upward between $5,000 to $10,000 off of one single endorsement. Not for the year, but just off of one single endorsement. They can get $5,000 to $10,000. Anything over that, any amount of money over that, the NCAA will now have to put rules and restrictions on it, because they don't want the players essentially making somewhere upwards of the $500,000 a year while still being a amateur college athlete, because they still have those rules and restrictions. But now we have an intro, we have a thing to where we might be able to see EA Sports come out with NCAA football games and basketball games. We might be able to see college video games come back, because EA Sports never said that they didn't want to pay the players. They always wanted to give the players some sort of compensation. It was the NCAA restricting those rules and restricting them from being able to do so.
Mm-hmm. It was always that question of amateur status. That was always the issue. Even looking back at the early 2010, I believe, Northwestern football player, I forgot his name, but I will use him as a reference in this case. He was the first one to actually fight the NCAA in order to get compensation for his likeness, or that likeness as a whole, because they were. I don't believe it was him per se, but it was the fact that players were getting hurt and getting cut from teams and stuff like that because they couldn't play no more. That was their whole livelihood, their whole future gone within the instant, just like that, and they couldn't even see a dime of it. But they got their free tuition. That was NCAA's comeback for that. That free tuition is nice for that year that you get to use it. But what's going to happen after that year when you thought you was going to be able to make, let's just say you get that rookie contract, and that shit is gone now. What's even worse about it is now that that's gone, you're off their payroll. They don't owe you no more obligations anymore. So it was very odd to see how it took, let's say, 10 years just to get where we are today. I'll be glad to see NCAA come out with the NCAA 20 for basketball, football. Hell, I even play if they got it for track. You just got to press the button to keep mashing. Make you run faster. LSU track stars going up, man.
Now that we're out of the draft, we'll get straight into all the gossip, all the talks, and what have you. There's a rumor going around that Odell is trying to work out a deal and potentially go to the Minnesota Vikings. I'll let you start.
It's like if this was the NBA, you will automatically think this is tampering right now. The fact that we're hearing about this shit is tampering. LeBron James Part 2. But I would say this is a good deal. This would be a good trade for the Vikings. Now it depends on what they got to give up to get Odell, because they did give up Stephon Diggs, because they had to have a plan coming or seen this shit, foreseen it from happening. Otherwise, they would not have just traded Stephon Diggs so quick like they did. And I don't think they got a first-round pick from that. They didn't get a first-round pick from that, just from that trade. But
they got something. Yeah, the Vikings had 14 picks in this draft. 14. So they got some good kickback from sending Stephon Diggs to the Buffalo Bills, which I think was a great trade on both sides. The Vikings got a chance to not necessarily rebuild, but they got an opportunity to kind of reload on what they already had a solid team. And then the Buffalo Bills, we'll get to the Buffalo Bills probably next week or whenever, because, we'll do a full breakdown. But I think they got a really solid piece in Stephon Diggs. were you done with your take on Odell and him going to the Vikings?
It's not a good look for a receiver to bounce around like he's doing now. I would just be honest. I feel like it was good that he got out of the New York Giants. I don't feel like he would have been able to thrive like he did for his maximum amount of time that he's going to have. I thought it would have been perfect for him at the Browns. But
for me, I think it's okay. It's good for the Vikings. The Vikings adding another receiver to that core, so now you have Adam Thielen, potentially Odell Beckham, and Justin Jefferson, the rookie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good receiver core. I don't think it's good for Odell. Point being, since he's entered the league, he's had either half of a quarterback or he's had lackluster in the quarterback position. Hear me out. When he had Eli, he was putting up good numbers with Eli, and Odell is still, to this day, a top 10 receiver. He's still putting up good numbers, and talent-wise, he's probably top 5 receiver of all time, talent-wise alone. But he had Eli, who was on his transition out, and then got traded. Baker Mayfield never clicked. I guess him and Freddie Kitchens, the whole whatever happened last year, he wasn't the number 1 receiver, and he was playing number 2 to Jarvis Landry, which makes sense because Jarvis had more time with Freddie Kitchens, and he's also had more time with Baker Mayfield to gel and build that system.
Mm-hmm.
Odell needs a system around him. Not saying that he's the number 1 priority, but he needs to be a factor. And if you want the production out of him that you know you can get, he has to be the number 1 receiver. The reason why Stephon Diggs left is because he was what? He was playing the number 1 position. He was playing the number 1 receiver position, but was giving number 2 receiver receptions, yards, touchdowns. Adam Thielen was their go-to. Am I wrong?
Not wrong about that. They use Adam Thielen for like the short intermediate throws.
Adam Thielen was their number 1 target.
Mm-hmm.
So him going to the Vikings is going to make him replace Stephon Diggs. He's just a more talented version of Stephon Diggs in that system. I don't think he's going to gel with Kirk Cousins that much. I don't even like Kirk Cousins that much at quarterback. That's just my personal opinion. But I don't think he's worth it. So I think it's going to be another head scratcher. I think it's going to be another headache. But if he can somehow gel with this system, I think it's just the Browns just with a new face.
Mm.
The Cleveland Brown, him in the same situation that he was in Cleveland, with a different quarterback who's still not as proven. I mean, he's won more games than Baker because Baker had more progressive commercials last season than he had wins. So he's a more proven quarterback when it comes to wins, and when it comes to playoffs, he has more experience, of course, because Baker hasn't made the playoffs, and Eli, towards the latter half of his career, wasn't going to make the playoffs. So he has the potential of actually going to the playoffs and doing something and doing some damage in the playoffs, so we can actually get to see what he does and how he performs in the playoffs. But overall, I think it's lackluster, to say the least. I'm not surprised. I'm not looking forward to it. It is what it is. But we can go into a different team and a different news, and let's go into Andy Dalton being traded out of Cincinnati to Dallas. Do you want me to start on this, or do you want to go?
Yeah, start that. I gotta bring up everything I had in my head.
Dak Prescott is getting the biggest middle finger from Jerry Jones of all time. Now, Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback in the league. I don't like the Cowboys, but I have to respect his numbers and the numbers that he puts up. Aside from the playoffs, because, they hardly ever make the playoffs. They somehow seem to fold right before it's playoff time.
That sounds like a jab to the Dallas Cowboys right there.
I mean, I'm just stating facts. But he is a top 10 quarterback throughout the regular season. So I think, and he put up really good numbers last year. I mean, if you don't care for him or the Cowboys, whatever, just look up the numbers that he put up. He put up pretty decent stats, and I think that he is deserving of a payday. I think he should have signed, or they should have worked out a deal before Carson Wentz got paid or before all these other quarterbacks got paid because he hasn't proven himself in the playoffs. And in order to get your $30 million or $33, $34 million a year guaranteed, you got to produce. The only person to get that type of money is Kirk Cousins because his contract is like 90% guaranteed or something like that. Something crazy. I got to know who Kirk Cousins who is. I need his agent just for life. My financial manager to work my books in the future. I just need to talk to that man. But anyway, I think he's still going to, if Dak allows it, if Dak decides to stay and actually participate, I think Dak's still going to be the starting quarterback for the Cowboys. But I won't be mad if he decides to not show up to training camp when this whole COVID thing is over, to not show up to any preseason games, and to do a whole holdout and let y'all want to sign Andy Dalton to a one-year deal? Let him be your starting quarterback. I'll sit out the entire season. I'll pull a Le'Veon Bell. I don't see why he won't pull a Le'Veon Bell and sit out the entire season because y'all decided not to pay me. Y'all wanted to give Andy Dalton some money before y'all decided to even work out a real deal with me, because every other deal that they tried to work out, he seemed to be like it was a lowball deal, or he seemed to feel like he was undercut. He was undercut in the deal. So he was like, screw it. I mean, if I was him, sit out. Let Andy Dalton be the starting quarterback. Please sit out. For the Eagles, please sit out. Because Andy Dalton's not going to win a single game. I don't care what y'all strength of schedule is. He's not going to win. He's going to win 5 games with Dallas.
Let me run by you some numbers real quick. Andy Dalton's last playoff stats, he went 0 for 4, 57.8 passing rating, and had 6 INTs. That was during his last playoff stint. Last time in the playoffs, just so we're clear. If Dallas Cowboys' plan was to let him learn from Andy Dalton, so he can teach him all his tricks and trade, because Dak Prescott is still a relatively young quarterback compared to Andy Dalton. Like, the number of years that they both in the league is not similar, not comparison as much as you would think. But if their plan was to have Andy Dalton teach Dak Prescott, you could have picked a better teacher than Andy Dalton. The money that they could have used to give Dak Prescott, they instead gave it to Andy Dalton just to sit on the bench, rather than instead give it to me so I can perform better. They could have made it as like bonuses or incentives for you to play better, and that would have been your money right there.
The team with the most primetime games in this, because the NFL schedule just came out yesterday, the team with the most primetime games in this NFL season are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last time Tampa Bay Buccaneers were relevant, were really good, was when John Gruden won with a Tony Dungy team and won his first Super Bowl, which really should have been another Tony Dungy Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. Everybody who remembers that knows exactly what I'm talking about. But Tampa Bay Bucks got Brady, and they somehow managed to get Gronk. Now, I'm not surprised when they grabbed Gronk. I kind of figured it because I knew Gronk's only reason why Gronk wanted to come back to football was to play with his brother, Tom Brady. And let's be real, Gronk doesn't have fun with Belichick. Gronk and no quarterback in a Belichick system in New England means I got to not only work out and get back into my prime shape to be the number one target in New England, but I don't have Tom Brady, and I got this grumpy old Grinch of a man looking at me to lead this team, looking at me to be the forefront of this team, looking at me to be the captain of this team. And that comes with a lot of responsibility, because I feel like that's partially the reason why Brady and Belichick didn't get along, because Brady had certain things he wanted to implement. Belichick is stuck in his ways, and that's where the headbutting was coming at for years upon years, because it's like, you don't let me shine and let me be me. You want me to still be the same person you drafted back in the 2000 draft, and I'm not that same dude. I know you gave me my shot. I know together we created the greatest franchise, the greatest dynasty to hit the NFL, but I got to spread my wings, and you never let me spread my wings. But, I mean, what was your take on the trade? Because they still have O.J. Howard. They have
Cameron Bates as well at tight end. So,
They have Brashad Perriman, who was so at receiver. They got Mike
Jones, running back from SC, Ronald Jones. Mike, not Mike, Mike Evans, yeah, Mike Evans, receiver.
and they have who's the other receiver? Goodwin.
Chris Goodwin. There you go.
Chris Goodwin.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to get straight into their not really their strength of schedule, but straight into their schedule and how they fare out in the NFC South? Because we're gonna do the whole NFC South right now. So I'm gonna go just game for game.
Let's see. It's more or less before we get to game, I kind of it makes sense why Gronk left. I kind of didn't really picture him going anywhere else besides to the Patriots. Not Patriots, to the Buccaneers to play with Tom Brady, and then didn't make no other option for him to go play with the Ravens or with the Chiefs. If he left for a reason with the Belichick, there's no reason why he would retire at that age. I understand if you hurt, your body's breaking down on you. By all means, choose your health over the sport. But if you're gonna come back, then it kind of says a lot about how he really felt about Belichick and how he really felt about the Patriots in general. But that was my take on it. All right. So I'm gonna call it then a highlight game. I definitely should look for is the Kansas City at Tampa Bay. That should be one game we should definitely pay attention to.
The Saints, I think, is another highlight game.
The first or second one?
I think they're gonna lose the first one, just because the Saints don't have a whole new system that they're trying to implement.
Right. It's not like they quarterback. They're
quarterback good where they are. They didn't really this whole draft was just filling in pieces because overall, top to bottom, I think the Saints, San Francisco 49ers, Baltimore Ravens. I think those are and Kansas City Chiefs. Those are the top four most complete teams from top to bottom. From quarterback all the way down to their kicker, they have really good people in all their positions. They may not have the best in every position. I think the Kansas City Chiefs kind of struggle a little bit on defense in the linebacking core and their front seven in general, but they did enough to win them a Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? But I think the Saints at home in New Orleans as their opening game, I think there's nobody going to beat them. I don't think anybody can come into New Orleans and beat them their opening game. But I think that them playing in week 9 at home in Tampa Bay, I think that's a shootout.
That's where everything is starting to click. Everything is fired on all cylinders. The whole game. I won't say the game slowed down for Tom Brady, but the game is going to be the system is going to be more apparent, and you'll be able to do more things. The one thing I want to worry about the Buccaneers is their special teams. They gonna have their starting running back as their I believe it was punt returner when I saw the depth chart, and that's fine and dandy, but will get tired. You can't play that many games, run that fast, and do all this extra stuff, break all these tackles, and still be able to continue doing this at quarter 4 of this game. You will get tired. So that's something you should watch. That I would pay attention to.
So those are our top 2 games so far. What do you think the third outlier game is? If they played the Seahawks, I would say that's an outlier, but I'm kind of torn between the Packers and the Vikings.
Yeah, on week 14, but they're in Tampa Bay though too. That's another thing. I would say that one too. That's my biggest outlier. That Tampa Bay and Minnesota game. Because it's a lot of pieces, and that's going to be where the playoff race is going to start. I won't call it tightening up, but I will say there will be a lot less movement going on when Week 14 comes. That team that solidified themselves as the best, like how the AFC, that when the Baltimore Ravens did it and the Kansas City did it when they just took off, that nobody was competing with them. I do believe that's going to happen in the NFC, but is it going to be I don't think it's going to be the Packers. I do think there's a chance it could be the Vikings if Kirk Cousins performs away, and I do think it could be the Buccaneers if Tom Brady can get everything going. You don't have no falter in the beginning.
So, what do you think the overall record is going to be?
12-4.
You said 12-4.
12-4.
So that's saying. So you're essentially saying that Tom Brady has been Tom Brady this whole time, and it hasn't been the Belichick system. Because if you notice, when they started clicking, they haven't lost any more than they haven't. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's season average was 11 wins. Mm-hmm. So you're saying they're going 12-4. You're saying all 6 championships is Tom Brady, not Bill Belichick.
Yeah, it's something in the magic. I will admit, Tom Brady got it.
Yeah, I'm not doing that at all. They go 10-6, 10-6, and fight for a wild card spot. Because you got do a whole I do like Bruce Arians. I like Bruce Arians as a coach, but to do a whole flip from not making the playoffs and not even being in a playoff race to automatically 12-4, I think is a huge jump. But that's just me, because I think the NFC is a lot harder than the AFC when we break down the playoffs and who's going to buy each spot. But we'll get to that in another day. So then we'll go on to the Carolina Panthers. Do you have any highlight games for Matt Rule and for Teddy Bridgewater?
So with Teddy Bridgewater, I do believe that there's going to be an outlier, but the biggest one, I don't want to give it like the obvious one, because I want to see how that revenge game is going to feel against the Saints. I don't want that. It's the obvious one. That's what everyone's going to look back and see if he can make it happen, basically without the Saints' whole team around him, so to speak. But they ain't gonna play. The Carolina doesn't play the Saints until week 7. So I'd say going outside of that, the biggest game is gonna be the outlier is gonna be game 1. Can they handle it? Can Teddy Bridgewater handle business on week 1? If he can get that done, that's gonna say a lot for how the season's gonna go.
Week 1 versus the Raiders. Okay, I like that. Week 1 Raiders. Week 7 at New Orleans, and then I got the Chiefs. Defending Super Bowl champs in Kansas City. If you can beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, which I don't think that they can, but Matt Rule is known to turn around teams pretty fast with Temple and with Baylor. If he can pull that off, then they have upside. I say I have the Carolina Panthers winning 7. I see they go 7-9 this year.
Okay, that's a 2-game increase. That's roughly where I have them at too. I was gonna say 6-10, but there's a couple of games where I know they have a good chance of taking over. They have a good chance of like coming back, so to speak. I'm a little bit worried about how well I want to know if Christian McCaffrey can continue being a above average running back, but they're definitely not. They're not where they want to be yet. They still got some more pieces they got to settle in that defense, and they still got to worry about other key factors for them to even make that jump into playoff status.
Okay, let's go with the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
1 versus the Seahawks at home. That's an outlier for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think even though they have all these pieces, can you win at home versus a team who has a lot of pieces, who's already built, who's playoff ready, you change one drive, they're making the playoffs, and they now push San Francisco to a wild card team.
Mm-hmm. They get the San Francisco get exposed. They get shown that they're just a one-dimensional team, and that's a wrap. They potentially couldn't make the championship. I do see what you mean with that one game thing, one play type situation.
I have that. I have week 13 versus the Saints at home. You got to beat the Saints at home, and then also the last one is week 15 versus the Buccaneers at home. I have all of their key games being home games because how are you gonna how are you gonna defend or play against opening game versus a team who we know is gonna make a playoff spot?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Seahawks, whether it's a wild card or they win the division, I think they're gonna pretty much seal a playoff spot up. And then how do you play against the 2 best teams or who they're considering to be the 2 best teams in your division at home? Can you beat them at home?
That's a good question.
If you can beat them at home, you have a chance of beating them on the road, or you have a chance of tying up the series. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's not sure going to happen, especially when you got the Saints and you got the Saints. If you can show you can go 1-for-1, or hell, well, this is a stretch, but if you can go I think get 2 wins against the Saints, that would prove a lot, give a lot of confidence for the team, because they relatively played the Saints. The last time they're gonna play the Saints is Week 11. That they still will have about 6 more games until the season is over. But the fact that you got 2 wins on potentially the potential top 2 team in the NFC conference, that will do more than just boost up the morale. They'll give them a lot of confidence going into the season. And they frankly do have a good lineup. The Falcons team they have a nice, decent offense. It's just whether or not they can be able to consistently get a pass rush, which has been their biggest issue for the past 2 years. They're having a great pass rush to get to these quarterbacks, not giving them enough time. An outlier game that I kind of believe I thought that would be a good indicator would definitely be that Green Bay Packer game. It's one thing that you can show that you can win at home, but it's another thing you can show you can beat other teams outside of your home division. Because if they do make it to the wild card, then they're not going to be home at all. They're most likely going to have the worst record they're going to be the 6th seed going into it, and they're going to have to play everybody outside of Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Well, okay, so what do you think the overall record is going to be?
8-8.
Yeah, I had that exact same record for them.
That's a 1-game increase, but that one game matters.
I think that, to me, there are 3 outlier games. Oh, snap. Actually, yeah, the 3 outlier games for the Saints are Week 9 and Tampa Bay, 10 versus the 49ers at home, and then Week 15 versus the Chiefs at home. Those are 3 big matchups, 3 teams who we figure could make the playoffs, will make the playoffs, and have pretty solid stacked teams overall.
Mm-hmm. I would say, it's not going to be as the same hype as the other games you just mentioned, but the Packers versus the Saints is going to be it's not going to be a key indicator game, but it's going to be like the 2 teams that stack up against each other very similarly. That way, that they have a lot of comparisons on both offense and defense. But I still will give the nod to the Saints coming out on top in that game. And that's in Week 3. And another game I want to watch or look out after is going to be that game against you already call it the Niners game. I believe all the other teams that on their roster won't be as competitive as the Niners. If you look at the rest of the teams they play, they do end up playing the Vikings at Week 16 and do play the Eagles as well. But I believe that Niners game is going to be their biggest matchup against this whole year.
Not the Chiefs, not Saints and Chiefs.
It's one thing to play them, but you're gonna potentially play most of these teams again in the playoffs. Like you have a chance to play the Niners. You're gonna have a chance to play against the Eagles. You're gonna have a chance to play against the Vikings in the playoffs before you make it out. If you make it to the Super Bowl, who potentially you will have to play against the Chiefs. Let's be frank about that. But if you can't beat these teams, you can't show you can beat these teams. I don't think you really need to worry about the Chiefs. Yeah, I know. All right, now I can start. One of the outlier games I'm going to have is Week 3 against the Packers. That's the game that I always circle and pin in versus Saints versus the Packers, whether it's home or away. It's truly because they stack up against each other very similarly, offense or defense. Now, the comparison to that is the defense will be a little bit better, so to speak, compared to the Packers' acquisitions in this past draft and free agency. But I'll still give the nod to that team. Also, another outlier game I want to pay attention to is the Niners when they play against them in Week 10. Compared to the other team that they're going to play against, the Eagles, the other divisional games, the Vikings, the Niners are going to pose the biggest challenge to them when in this upcoming season. Now, you would think that because they do play the Chiefs in Week 15 that why isn't that their biggest competition game? They got to worry about beating the teams in the NFC first before they can handle getting to basically Super Bowl. That's probably the only chance they're going to see the Chiefs ever again. But that's for time to tell whether or not they can weather the storms when Week 15 comes.
Okay. So now that we got through all of the NFC South, I'm gonna tell you who I have winning the division. I have the Saints. I have. Oh, actually, no. My bad. Let's backtrack. What do you have the Saints' record be?
I see the Saints going 13-3. That's at best. 13-3 at best. At worst, 11-5.
So you see them going 13-3 like they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
I see it 13-3 as well. Either 13-3 or 12-4. They could have a mishaps versus a team like the Eagles or versus another team such as like they have a oops game versus like the Vikings week 16. You know, just like some sort of fumble mishaps game. Not saying that the Eagles or the Vikings aren't good teams, of course, because you know my affinity for the Eagles, but I'm just saying that I can see them losing a game that they're quote unquote not supposed to lose. But I have them going either 13-3, 12-4, and I have them winning their division. And I also have them being the best team in all of the NFC, being the number one overall seed.
Okay, that kind of took me for a surprise because their schedule is set up to have a lot of trap games, so to speak. That game before they play against the Niners, they got to play against the Buccaneers. That could be a potential trap game right there.
Mm-hmm.
They look forward into the future and have a slip, and then if they let that game carry over, they can lose two games back to back. Then that potential 3-13 record could drop all the way down to 11-5. That's why I recommended that good chance versus good chance of going 13-5 or a bad season going 11-5. Just not a bad season. You're still in the playoffs. You're just not the number one ranked.
From weeks 12 to 14, they have to be Road Warriors. They have the Broncos, Falcons, and Eagles. So I can do that. I mean, I think they're the most playoff-tested, battle-tested team in the NFC. I feel like they've gotten their bumps and bruises, and if any year was their year to at least go to the Super Bowl, I feel like this year is their year. If they don't go this year, I think they're breaking up some of that offense. I think they're breaking up some of that defense. I think if they don't go to the Super Bowl this year, if they don't get the correct amount of pieces or if they don't win big, I think they might break up and start shipping out some pieces because they won't have enough money to pay all these players.
You was right about that. I was kind of worried as a whole, if the Saints would have gotten like those high-end quality linebackers like I mentioned, Patrick Queen, Kenneth Murray, if they would have got one of those in the draft, I believe they would have been able to have that extra piece that would have made sure that they were like a 13 guaranteed type team, 13-win team. But you is right about that. There's gonna be a lot of mix-up. I would expect to see Cam Jordan. He may be another one on the trading block if this doesn't go like the way that they're supposed to win this season. Mm-hmm. So, and it's also kind of weird how they would do they would start shifting pieces after they didn't want to keep Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, that would have been perfect to keep on moving forward with Drew Brees getting older in age and whatnot.
Yeah, but so I have them winning the division, and then I also have the Buccaneers being the wild card team out of the division. Do you have the
so Falcons and the Panthers aren't making it again?
Just based off of their scheduling and based off of only two teams can really make it out of your division.
Fair enough. Unless you're in the AFC North, I believe, where it's always two, and you barely get a chance to see Bengals or Browns make it. That never gonna happen again.
But I mean, you do have your rare occasions, but I don't see it happening. But I think that's a good note to end it on. You want to do the outro, Mr. Good Brother, second brother.
Good brother number one, get ready to sign off of this podcast. I'd like to thank good brother number two in his great efforts. No matter how hard he may try, he can never step up to the match and quality of your boy. But that's gonna leave it here for us, folks. Stay tuned for next week we talk about the next division. We will talk about the AFC South. Go Colts and whatnot. And I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you.
You gonna stop disrespecting